долгосрочных дружеских отношений с соотечественниками. Все желающие приглашаются. Вход всегда бесплатный и предоставляются закуски. Для регистрации звоните по номеру 971 244 22 28 или посетите сайт www.slavicvote.org для получения дополнительной информации. Все остальные детали предоставляются после регистрации. Еще раз, звоните по номеру 971 244 22 28. Slavic Vote. Ваш голос, ваше сообщество.
Внимание!
Редакция медиахолдинга Slavic Family не несет ответственность за содержание рекламных сообщений и авторских программ.
Новости региона, выборы, кандидаты, стремления. Новая программа Slavic Vote Live. Каждую неделю в прямом эфире. Slavic Vote Live дает голос славянской общине по всему северо-западу. Мы говорим и информируем о важном в Вашингтоне, Орегоне, Калифорнии. По четвергам в 17:00. Присоединяйтесь к прямому эфиру на 10:40 АМ. Ищите Slavic Vote в соцсетях. Мы намерены продолжать продвигать свое видение и оказывать любую необходимую поддержку сообществу, чтобы изменить ситуацию к лучшему. Slavic Vote Live.
Добрый день, вы слушаете передачу Slavic Vote Live. Спасибо всем, кто подключились на сегодняшнюю передачу. Меня зовут Дима Сащенко. Мы, как обычно, каждый четверг приходим на эти волны с Ярославом, чтобы провести такие интересные передачи, поговорить по поводу выбора, поговорить по поводу что происходит сегодня у нас здесь в Орегоне, в Вашингтоне, и приглашать разных гостей, которые или кандидаты, или они уже находятся в какой-то позиции, которую они представляют, или нашу комьюнити, или в общем просто здесь находятся, чтобы нам помочь. И вот сегодня мы, как обычно, приходим, чтобы провести эту передачу. Ярослав, как у тебя дела?
Смотря что сейчас в мире происходит, то у нас здесь нормально и тихо.
Да. Много что происходит в мире, и мы, конечно, не будем сегодня заходить в те детали. Мы стараемся фокусироваться на то, что происходит здесь, у нас в Орегоне, в Вашингтоне. И вот мы сегодня поговорим. Я надеюсь, что те, кто нас слушают, они знают, что каждый год проходят выборы. Каждый год проходят локальные выборы или федеральные, штатовские выборы. И вот сегодня, я думаю, что некоторые, которые слушают нас, думают, что, может быть, только выборы проходят президентские каждые 4 года. Но мы сегодня, чтобы напомнить, что это не так. Каждый год проходят не только президентские выборы, и также проходят и локальные, и все остальные выборы, которые очень важные. И мы бы даже сказали бы, что эти выборы еще важнее, чем президентские выборы, потому что это влияет на нас, где мы живем, влияет локально, где на наши школы, на наши бизнеса и все это остальное. И вот мы сегодня об этом немножко поговорить. Сегодняшние, кстати, в этом году выборы обычно называются школьные выборы или школьные директора выборы, потому что большинство, все школьные директора или многие из них выбираются, или их меняют, ставят других, некоторые уходят, и они перебираются. И вот обычно в этом цикле выборов обычно очень много кандидатов на школьные позиции. И вот если вы получили ваши бюллетени, вы будете видеть там много школьных представителей, много школьных таких позиций. Ну и также бывают на этих позициях и также и другие позиции, которые, может быть, необычные. Часто находятся в выборе там, кто работает на, как сказать, water board или fire board. Вот такие позиции тоже бывают, находятся. Ну, большинство все школьные, и это очень важно. Я думаю, всем это тоже важно. И вот если вы получили ваши бюллетени, обращайтесь к нам, мы можем вам помочь. У нас в этом цикле нету сильно много информации, потому что не очень большие выборы на нашем веб-сайте. Вы просто можете найти страничку на нашем веб-сайте, где там вы можете просто написать вопрос, какие у вас вопросы, и мы к вам будем обращаться. И вот нам уже писали и вчера, и позавчера, и будут дальше писать до выборов. И вот выборы 7 ноября, и если вы получили ваши бюллетени, мы надеемся, что вы их заполните и это шлете. Ярослав, ты уже свои получил?
Я получил книжку, но не сами эти
Должны скоро
бумаги,
прийти,
да.
значит.
Да, они сказали, должно было вот прошлую пятницу прийти, но не знаю, посмотрим.
Да, большинство уже получили
Еще
книжки.
2 недели вроде осталось, да.
Да,
пока.
получается 12 дней. 12 дней. Я думаю, тебе должны прийти даже, может, сегодня. И вот если вам нужна помощь, обращайтесь. Сегодня с нами будет кандидат, один из этих кандидатов, который будет на ваших бюллетенях. Он давно с нами уже общается, он давно с нами с самого начала нас знает и нам помогал в начале, когда мы не знали много чего, и он нам объяснял, помогал, и вот он решил баллотироваться на представителя школьного директора в штате Вашингтоне. И вот мы немножко об этом поговорим, и его историю, почему он решил это сделать тоже. Перед тем, как мы начнем, я хочу тоже маленькие такие объявления сделать, которые мы обычно делаем. Если кто нас слушает, кто приехал недавно с Украины, год-два назад, и вам нужна помощь, точнее помощь информационная, мы проводим также отдельно, проводим такие семинары, такие собрания, где мы собираемся с теми, кому нужна информация, и приглашаем разных таких учителей, которые объясняют разные важные темы, как заполнять некоторые документы по поводу жилья, по поводу работы, по поводу миграционных вопросов. И вот если вам нужна эта помощь, и вы интересуетесь в этой программе, которая бесплатная для вас, это специальная программа, которая открылась недавно здесь, в Вашингтоне, в этом году, с помощью государства, которое помогает, финансирует это, чтобы помочь тем иммигрантам, которые приехали сюда с Украины. И вот если вы живете здесь, вы также с Украины приехали, и вам нужна помощь, вы можете обращаться. Если вы даже, может, здесь давно живете, и вам тоже интересно приехать и послушать, вы тоже можете приехать и послушать. И вот вы можете обращаться к нам. У нас проходят классы. Вот вчера были классы, у нас будут проходить классы и в этом месяце, и на следующем месяце еще будут классы. И это будет такая еще до следующего года. И вот подключайтесь, и мы будем рады вам помочь. Если вам интересно, вы можете тоже найти эту информацию на нашем веб-сайте. И также вы можете позвонить по телефону, который я сейчас дам, или текстануть, и мы вам больше дадим информации и запишем вас, чтобы вы могли присутствовать в этой программе. Я же знаю, Ярослав, ты уже тоже пару раз был на этих классах и помогал. Как тебе информация? Это, как думаешь, важная информация?
Ну да, я думаю, для новоприезжих, которые люди только сейчас, как говорится, там уже год здесь, то, к сожалению, здесь такая система в Америке, что она не то, что просто меняется часто, просто вопросов всегда. Я даже помню в прошлый раз, когда мы были на таком митинге, то там люди стояли, наверное, еще час после этой программы, когда там была презентация, и просто спрашивали вопросы, потому что вопросов очень много.
Да, так точно. Да, и я знаю, что вот даже у нас в прошлом месяце даже были гости такие, приезжали, которые проводили эти семинары. Сенатор орегонский был у нас, он проводил такие очень интересные темы. И вот разные учителя, разные темы. Подключайтесь, будем рады вас добавить. Опять это все бесплатно для вас. Будем рады вас добавить в эту программу. И по телефончику вы можете обратиться или по интернету. Звоните по телефону 971-244-2228. И еще раз 971-244-2228, и мы вам больше дадим информации. Или опять вы можете найти, как записаться на нашем сайте. Это slavicvote.org, и еще раз slavicvote.org. Спасибо большое, что вы подключились. Опять, если вы только что подключились, вы слушаете передачу Slavic Vote Live. Мы сейчас будем переходить на английский язык и будем говорить с нашим кандидатом, с нашим гостем, нашим другом, который давно занимается этой работой и вот решил, можно сказать, сделать следующий шаг, это баллотироваться на представителя. И вот если вы понимаете, надеюсь, вы останетесь с нами и будете с нами слушать дальше эту передачу. И также, если вам интересно, также будут еще некоторые другие объявления, я потом дам, будет проходить некоторые другие мероприятия тоже, которые вы можете больше узнать, если вы останетесь с нами. Спасибо большое. Gary, thank you for being here. I appreciate you coming on. I actually forgot to tell you a little bit that we're going to start off with this Russian version.
Oh, that's okay.
And then we're going to step in. So I apologize about that, but it's good to have you. Good to have you here. How are you?
Good, very good. And I'll just say, Благословит Тебя Господь.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
everything else will have to be English, but for me.
That works. That works. Well, thanks for coming on. You've been doing this for a long time, way before us, and we would love to hear your story. I don't think we ever even heard your story and what motivated you to get involved. So this is kind of a great place to invite our guests to kind of share more about them and share kind of why they do what they do and why they decided, for your situation, for example, you decided to take on originally libraries, right?
Yes.
A lot of things were happening that you and others were not happy about, and a lot of the Slavic community were not happy about. So there was a lot of action around that. And I don't know, I haven't been following if there's still a lot of protests around it, but I feel like there's so many other problems out there. It's just hard to follow.
Hard to address all of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe it's intentional that way. Who knows?
Yeah.
Well,
we're winning the battle there.
Yes.
I guess most of my life I was working in, church activities, family, just didn't have time to really get involved, would see things around the community that I didn't agree with, but who had the time? And luckily, fortunate, God blessed us to be able for me to retire at an earlier age, 57. And for a year I was enjoying it, but then suddenly the Drag Queen Story Hour popped up and I just thought, that just doesn't sound right. I can stand against this. Before I've always said, well, if I had the time, I would. But this time, God kind of just tapped me on the shoulder. It was, you can do something now. You have the time. So, yeah, I didn't know what I was doing, but, I went to that first Drag Queen Story Hour and had a sign out with my wife and my daughter. She was 9 at the time, my youngest, and just we love you, but not Drag Queen Story Hour. And some people coming in were flipping us off, and you kind of know you're on the right side when the other side does that. But I went to the first board meeting in February of 2019 and started a pledge form to vote no on the next library levy until such time as they stop supporting Drag Queen Story Hour. I mean, they have their venues. They're, just leave the kids alone. So that was really our point. And, that we've gotten to date over 4,600 people have pledged to vote no. And when the board wasn't listening to that, the first year, I thought that was really going to mean something to them. And when it wasn't, I started networking with some other elected officials to get our people appointed to the board, because those positions are appointed. And slowly but surely, we, gained the majority on the board now. So things are in good hands.
So did you, as far as getting involved in politics, did you do anything else besides just starting off with the library? Just within you said you retired. A lot of people, they lose their purpose when they retire. It looks like you kind of found a purpose.
Actually, I did. About 58 years old, it was like God finally, gave me my purpose in life. And that was to stand up for kids. I thought it's just started with the library, but now it's going, of course, into schools, because schools are even more, that's where kids are. And they're 6 hours a day, 180 days a year. I mean, they have more influence on kids than parents in the church. So if something's amiss there, that's not good.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. I would love to go back even further. Maybe you can share a little bit. Where are you from? Where you come originally? Before you go there, I wanted to do a couple announcements. Yaroslav, do you mind sharing a little bit for those folks maybe who are tuning in for the first time? Who's Slavic Vote? What exactly do we do? And again, for those folks who might be tuning in for the first time.
Yeah, so we're about 4 years old, maybe 4+ now. Kind of started from a movement which kind of goes to, I don't know if it lined up with the library. Close. Maybe it did, but that's when everybody went out to the Olympia and did all the protests.
Yes.
Oh, so we kind of were born at the same time, I guess.
God called us to it.
Yeah, we're pretty young, considering the political world has been going on for 200 years in this country, close to. So and as far as the Slavic community, we kind of quickly realized that people weren't voting because they weren't getting the ballots. So we spent about a year and a half or so doing just pure registration drives.
Yeah,
went to a lot of churches, and I think with the doors did kind of open up for us. We didn't really make any effort, or we did in a way, but of
Some-
getting the
some more
pastors
easier
on
than
board.
others.
Right.
Yeah, because before that it was just locked, everything, no access to anything. But people realized that sitting on the sidelines can only go so far.
Yes.
When the sidelines start moving towards your direction, you're like, we've got to do something. So, so Slavic Vote was kind of born out of that to represent the Slavic community. I don't think there were any other organizations that were doing anything like that, at least in the Slavic
yeah.
community. I think there were a couple startups.
There was, there was a group like the Olympia group, the family. I forget the exact name.
But what we
See,
quickly
it's-
realized is that people were doing, even specific communities or churches, they were doing something on their level, but there was nothing that was kind of like
Coordinated.
to bring everybody together to realize, okay, this is a little bit bigger than just our community. Of
Well, I would say
church
a
or-
lot of what was happening at the time was reactionary, and
Yeah.
nobody was addressing the root cause of the issues.
Yeah.
And we, from the beginning, I would say we got this kind of vision or whatever that we need to tackle the registrations, because that's these things are happening because nobody's voting,
Right.
nobody's doing actually anything about it. They're just complaining. So let's hit the registrations and get those folks registered.
And Dima, you're completely correct, because what we realize is going out to Olympia is great, but the change
sailing.
actually happens at the ballot boxes.
Yeah, it does. Exactly.
So it's good for PR, I guess. But and then after we did actually we never really saw a slowdown as far as the registration goes. We were pleasantly surprised. We would go into the same place 5, 6, 7 times, and you would get about the same amount of registrations. So. People were kind of warming up to the idea of getting these ballots. A lot of people weren't registered. They were citizens. After they started getting the ballots, then the questions came in, and that's when we realized that, hey, we got to provide these people information on, how to vote. A lot of candidates, because if you've read the actual manuals for some of the, not just the candidates, they have a biography, maybe a nice little picture, but if you start voting for specific, initiatives or whatnot, you got to be almost like a lawyer to read those,
Gets wordy.
to figure out, is this say yes or no? Because even if you figure out the meaning of the initiative, it's hard to figure out if it's a yes or a no. So.
True.
And then, so that's what we did. And then I think the last leg of what we were doing was actually more educational. And then the last step is actually getting the Slavic community to take part. And interestingly enough, school boards, I think, were kind of like the first level of trying to get into politics, get your feet wet, besides maybe becoming a PCO, which I know a lot of the Slavic community did for some time. But I think the school boards, since the kids were going to school, some parents did go to the board meetings, and they realized, hey, we got to do something. So we had a couple people run just to kind of get our feet wet.
Sure.
Not going for the win, but just like, hey, we got to try this out. So this is where we're kind of at. We're trying to get the Slavic community to actually go out there and, instead of just talking, actually doing something.
Good.
In that sense.
Yeah,
so.
I'm going for the win.
Perfect. Well, thanks for sharing that. For those folks who might be, who tuned in for the first time, you listen to the Slavic Vote Live, and we're here with really great guests. We'll continue talking with them. Thank you for sharing that. I also want to just quickly announce, if you have to go, there's an event that's coming up that you might want to come, and you might even meet Gary there. It's going to be happening November 18th. At the Firmly Planted Center, which is the new location where Heidi St. John opened up, expanded to be more exact, where they're going to have this great event that's coming up. Again, I think you'll be there probably, so they'll get to meet you if they want to come and talk to you. There's going to be featured speakers like Bob McCoy. Heidi will be there and others, and it'll be a great event. November 18th at 7 p.m., and it's a free event, and there's options for VIP as well if you want to, but just wanted to throw that out there just in case somebody tunes out later on today and they don't get to hear this. So, if we want to just rewind back a little bit more, I know that we know you mostly from your activism days, but share us a little bit about, are you originally from Washington?
No, I'm actually from New England, Massachusetts, born.
Wow.
And kind of met my wife through Christian Singles before the internet. It was like we kind of mailed letters back and forth.
Interesting.
And one of us had to move, and I flew out here for a week, and it was December of 1986, and fell in love with Mount Hood, fell in love with her, not necessarily in that order, but probably did. Probably fell in love with Mount Hood first, because you don't see things like that on the East Coast, just this mountain. Everywhere you look, it's there. I mean, on the East Coast, things are pretty flat. So,
where exactly in New England?
Near Boston.
Boston?
Framingham, actually. It's a suburb.
Beautiful place.
Yeah.
Probably not the same anymore.
Probably not. Probably not. It was
I was
okay
there-
growing up. but-
I was there just once, and really cool town. I really enjoyed being there.
Mhm.
So awesome. Well, so you decided to come here, and what was your what did you did you have did you open a business, or what was your life like?
I got in accounting. I went to college for accounting. Kind of worked full time during the day. Went to college at night, and took a few extra years, about 5.5 years. But I really, I enjoyed going at night, because it was more the teachers and the students that were there wanted to learn. It wasn't like our parents were making us go. We were trying to make our, better our lives. So. And I was working at a Woolworths, actually doing mopping floors and buffing floors and cleaning bathrooms. But it helped me get here. So, and got a degree, and then came out here, worked for a few different companies in accounting. So, and then luckily God blessed and allowed me to retire early. So
Awesome.
And he had other plans for me. That's why.
And I think you mentioned you did some church ministry.
Yeah. I've done Awana for probably 20 years in my life.
What is that?
Awana.
Oh, what is that?
Approved Workmen Are Not Ashamed. It's a boys and girls kind of Christian club
Okay, I've never heard
in
of it.
churches.
Okay.
Awana,
Interesting.
AWANA, where they learn verses mainly.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you share the gospel with them, and they play games. It's just something good for the kids, church kids, but also to reach other kids outside the church. You have games, and so that draws them in, and then they hear the gospel. So
Right. Awesome. And so were you, like, for us in the political world, this is kind of a new thing. Like, we started just paying attention, 7 years ago, maybe for some folks 2 years ago. Individually, yeah. Were you, like, always following it, and you were thinking about getting involved? What was that like?
really not closely. I was, conservative and would vote always, every time, and tried to do what, as God led. But I really wasn't involved. Just really didn't have the time. I mean, when you're working 50 plus hours a week and got a whole bunch of church duties and family, kids growing. I was, my middle daughter was 14, and my wife ended up having another child. So I was 49 when she was born, and my wife was 42. So God's got a sense of humor. So we're kind of starting over again, but we wouldn't have it any other way. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for sharing. So you retired, and then you kind of found this new passion, I guess, or kind of what happened there?
Yeah, well, it was the drag queen story hour, just kind of like, wait a minute, that's over the line. I'm sorry. I mean, some things, you can give and take, but other things are just, no, that's too far. And so, just started standing there, and then got to know some good people. Jennifer Hine-Withy, I don't know if you know Jennifer. She was with Parents' Rights in Education, the Washington Parents' Rights in Education, and then now she's with Family Policy Institute of Washington. But getting to know her, a few other strong, people that knew what they were doing. Dawn Land, she's the one who authored the Referendum 101, which we almost had enough signatures, so it was rough. We missed by 5,000. I know I turned in 1,200 signatures myself trying to get that Senate Bill 5599 overturned. But we'll continue fighting. I mean, you can't give up. That's the worst thing to do. There's another battle coming, so you just gotta, prepare for that. So, and about 2 years ago, what got me off the bench is, to use one of Heidi's terms, for as far as evergreen. I mean, I was standing in Battleground in 2019. They were fighting the comprehensive sex ed, and I was showing up there, and luckily, I don't know if you know this gentleman, Stuart Quint. He connected me. He's a Slavic gentleman. He connected me with a gentleman who liked our Library Strong shirts that I had, and they were fighting comprehensive sex ed in Battleground at that time. So he ended up letting me do like 600 shirts 300 of them were library strong, 300 were school strong. I have a school strong on right now, but they were this color, and when I went up there, it was the first or the second reading in October of 2019. We're fighting the comprehensive sex ed, trying to get it kicked out, and I showed up with 100 shirts, and 200 people showed up, and 100 shirts didn't go all the way, and so it was just good for, I did this in March of 2019 too, with the first, or second library board meeting after standing against Drag Queen Story Hour, and luckily 200 of Slavic folks came out at the Three Creeks Library. I even have a video on my website, my library website, and it was awesome. I mean,
Wow.
but as far as the battleground though, it was another 200 people showed up. I mean, it was lingual, racial. It was, everybody standing against comprehensive sex ed. And like I said, I gave out all the 100 shirts. So when the board came out, bam, they saw a lot of people, and it's like you're organized and you're funded, and it's just, it kind of creates a mental image. It's like, they're serious. You want to be taken serious. And, Vicky showed up that night, Vicky Kraft, good friend of mine, and she talked with the board and got them to realize, yeah, we can don't have to accept comprehensive sex ed. This is before it was mandated. In fact, it was probably mandated in part because Battleground kicked it out. And yeah,
I heard about that.
Yeah, 2019. And Tina Lambert, she actually was in our, Vicky and Paul Kraft and my wife and I and Tina Lambert and her husband Dave were in our church life group. I mean, the three families, and there was a couple more families, but it was just God really using all of us, because she was on the board. She was the one who put the motion out there that we didn't have to teach sex ed, and it ended up passing. So that's how we got it kicked out. But 6 months later, Olympia mandated it because other school districts were lining up to say, yeah, maybe we can kick it out. And then so they could just, it's Democrat-controlled legislature up there, so they just had to mandate it because they didn't want school districts, school boards determining that. So, and here I am. You're probably wondering what got me off the bench for Evergreen. I mean, I wasn't paying attention to Evergreen. Honestly, I guess, what is that term? Ignorance is bliss. I just wasn't paying attention. And then something happened. A middle school teacher for Evergreen in June. I didn't find out about it till August. It kind of got published at that point. But in June, she made a statement on Facebook wishing death on the unvaccinated. And this is a public Facebook post by a Evergreen middle school teacher. And, that attitude's permeating her class. And my daughter was going to be going into middle school in another year or two. And it's like, so I went to the board. She actually even went further, I should say, on the post. A friend of hers was like, well, you sure you want to go that far? And she's like, well, if we're lucky, we'll lose 30% of the people who vote the wrong way. I mean, she doubled down on it. And she was talking Republicans. And, so I went to the board meeting and I just said, read what she had written, and they knew about it. But, it's public. And I just asked, hey, what are you guys doing about it? And I also read them they had a policy written the year before about, condemning, among other things, hate speech. And I read the policy to them, and especially the part about hate speech, it's like, you guys condemn this, and now what are you going to do about your employee that's saying, what's wishing death on a group of people just because they have a different opinion than you? I mean, can't get much more hateful than that. So it's like, what are you guys going to do about it? And of course, they don't want to talk about it. Oh, it's an HR matter. We can't discuss it, sweeping it under the rug. So if anything, the library board knew me that if I don't get, some traction, I keep coming back. So I've been to like 50 of the last 55 library board meetings. And so I've been basically to almost every school board meeting since then. And as I go, I find a lot of dysfunction in the board and just a lack of transparency. In fact, everybody in the district is screaming how lack of transparency the board has right now. And, they're trying to between the teachers' strike and the budget cuts, and then the shooting just last Thursday, and how the superintendent tried to paint it as no big deal, tried to downplay it, and no, it was a big deal, and people were at the board meeting Tuesday night reminding him, as well as me.
Right. Well, thanks for sharing that. So all that happened, and then now you decided to take the next step, like you said, get off the bench and run for a position that I think a lot of folks are going to be seeing on their ballots. Share a little bit about what position exactly, and which area, so folks can look for your name.
Yeah, Evergreen School District, and position 3. So
Perfect.
I'm running against a 24-year incumbent. She's pre-millennial. She's been there since 1999. So she's lost her objective. She's not really looking. What got me really concerned too, I mean, there's other, I mentioned the concern that brought me out, and there have been other concerns. I've been trying to get them to focus on check the facts. It's a more family-friendly, comprehensive sex ed curriculum than the Flash curriculum or Planned Parenthood curriculums. And just, it's not explicit. It doesn't push the boundaries. It's, families would be more agreeable to it. And, they just wouldn't even listen to that. We tried to get it in Battleground. It missed by a 3-2 vote. But if I can get on the board, I'll be bringing that up again. But what I think everybody can get concerned about, though, with Evergreen is their academics. Evergreen right now is the worst school district in Clark County out of the 9 Clark County, and we're the biggest, but we're also the worst academically. Only 26.9% of our students are meeting math standards. So almost 3 out of 4 Evergreen students are failing to meet math standards. And, I've been bringing this up to the board for 2 years, and basically it's in one ear and out the other, and they're on to business as usual, and they want to blame the pandemic. But, I went back and looked, and Evergreen's been dropping overall in the 3 academics, English, science, and math, every year since 2016. So the 4 years, they like to blame the pandemic, but the 4 years before the pandemic, we were going down every year. So no, it's bigger than just a pandemic. Don't just, throw out an excuse. We need solutions, not excuses. And next door Camas, we're averaging 33% in the 3 academics. Camas is averaging 70%. And it's like, I go to them, why? What curriculum? Why don't we look and see what curriculums Camas is using, K through 12, especially in math, and see where there's differences. Is that part of the disparity? Because they're doing 64% in math. We're 25, 26. So, yeah, I'm sorry. You want to...
So is this something, well, first of all, for our viewers and people that are listening to us right now, how do people go to these board meetings? Where is this publicized? Is this a website that they can go to just for their knowledge?
Yeah, you can go to the website. I know Evergreen's board meetings are Tuesdays, usually the 2nd and 4th Tuesday, although some months they only have one, and that would be probably the 2nd Tuesday of the month, and it starts at 5:30. That's kind of a hard time for people sometimes to get there that early. And Vancouver actually is the 2nd Tuesday. It's too bad they're not different, because I'd like to go to I've been to Vancouver's once this year and actually spoke there. Their academics sadly aren't much better. They are better, but they're only about 5% better overall than Evergreen's. So
yeah, it's amazing, because I know when we were looking for a place to buy, and we were looking first. What parents with kids do is they look at the schools. At least that's what we looked at with my wife. And I think back then the Evergreen district was like at a 4. This is a couple of years back. And on a scale of 10, just a scaling system that they used. And I think it dropped down to like a 2 or something just within the last, like, post-pandemic. And I'm like, man, didn't they pass a couple levies? They got more money. So it's not a money issue. No. The ratings didn't go up. So, and then, it's just, I mean, and the thing is, so using the pandemic as an excuse for, I don't know, low quality education, I guess, or maybe bad curriculums, How does that make sense if there are less kids in schools now? Because a lot of people that saw this coming, they pulled their kids from the school system
Yes.
anyway, from the public school system anyway.
Right. They've lost 3,500 students in the last 4 years, and that's why they had to do a $19 million budget cut for this fiscal year right now, school year. And sadly, they only were mainly looking at closer to student positions, not admin, and that got 300 people coming out to one of the March board meetings. Just because you mentioned the levy, I actually wrote the opposed statement to the February of last year's levy.
And it passed.
No,
They didn't?
that one failed. That was the first time it failed in 26 years. And that was February. And then they came back in April and ran it
Okay.
again, and it did pass that time. But they did lower the rate, so they just kept
okay,
the
that's
rate.
what I was, because I was talking to one of the students that actually was in the Evergreen school system.
Right.
He's actually sitting, he's our audio operator.
Oh,
He's
okay.
like, it passed. I'm like, why?
Well,
But-
I didn't really, when I wrote the opposed statement, I really didn't care if it passed or failed.
Mm-hmm.
It was more just, I wanted voters to cast an informed vote and let them know how we're doing academically, and do we really want to keep throwing money at this, or do we want to fix it first? If we keep giving them everything they want, there's no incentive.
No change.
No
yeah.
change,
So are we going the route of like Oregon where there are no requirements for graduation? Is that where Washington's going, or at least Clark County?
Yeah, basically, I was in an interview with the Columbian 2 weeks ago, and they were pushing for, well, how do we save money? And I mentioned, well, we may have to close a school or two. I mean, I want to more cut admin. I think that's where we need to look.
Yeah.
Their high price salaries are, everybody there is making over 100,000. Superintendent 344,000. Assistant
Wow.
Superintendents are
assistant
crazy.
superintendent 254. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But beyond that, they were like, well, what, were pressing me on a school. And I mentioned, and I shouldn't have, because I hadn't really done enough homework. I just was looking at a night or two before different schools in the district and how they were doing academically. And I noticed Legacy had less than 3% of their students meeting math standards. So out of 100 kids, 2 to 3 are meeting math. So and it was interesting. My opponent was like, well, that would be horrible to do that, because those kids, they didn't used to graduate, just a handful, and now we're graduating like almost 100. And it's like, okay, yeah, you're graduating almost, let's say 90, but only 2 of them are meeting math standards. I mean, what does that graduation, or what does that diploma really mean? What does it show? It shows nothing. I really, sorry, for 98% of the kids, they're not, getting the job done, and we're still graduating them, and they can't do math proficiently or read maybe proficiently, but they're getting a diploma. So, and it's interesting. 93%. I remember the first time I brought up academics to the board, and I wasn't telling them anything they don't know. This is their job. They should know this, and I'm sure they did. But someone coming publicly talking about it, they don't really want those numbers getting out. But this is per OSPI. It's on their website. It's called the report card. OSPI's Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, Chris Reichdahl. He's the chair or the director. Not the best individual for the job, but in any case, we got to try to take him out for the next election. But anyway, you can look it up online. And I brought these numbers out to the board, and one of the board members, Rob Perkins, he's actually up for re-election, and a gentleman, Chuck Kepler's running against him. I would probably, if I were you, I'd probably vote for Chuck. Anybody that's on the board allowed things to get the way they are doesn't really deserve to be elected again. So, but Rob came down to me after I commented after the meeting and said, but the tests have gotten a lot more difficult, the standardized testing, and in recent years. And he saw that didn't resonate with me, and then he did the most foolish thing. He does this fist pump, and he goes, but we got a 93% graduation rate. And it's like, I told him, yeah, what is that telling you? You're just pushing them along. They can't read, they can't write, they can't, math proficiently.
So how many parents do you think actually realize this? Like as far as the standards falling and falling and falling? Because I remember the day actually when one of my kids came home and they're like, "We don't have any homework anymore," and I was like, "Really?" And I thought he was just joking, and I actually had my wife go and verify with the teacher. I'm like, "Oh, really? They're not doing any homework at home?" They're like, "Yep, it's the new thing." So I was like, okay.
Not good. Not good.
Yeah. So, I mean, just for our listeners, I know a lot of parents realize that we're actually keeping track of their kids and what they were doing in school. But a lot of parents, they're like working full time. Both parents are working. They're not realizing that the bar fell so far. Unless you're again living in Camas, or
Right. Camas is doing well.
even Washougal. I don't know how Washougal is doing, but I know Camas has got like the Camas High School was at a 10 for years. I think it went down to a 9 recently, but
Right.
it's still
they're
up
awesome.
there.
Yeah, they are awesome. Yeah, that's why I wrote the opposed statement. Really was to educate parents. I mean, the first thing I talked about really was the academic scores and saying this is like our operating results. I mean, what businesses can operate that less than 50% of the product. I don't want to call students product, but I mean, we got to be up near. And I told this in my interview with the Columbian. I want Evergreen to be on par with Camas, and I'm not going to rest for 4 years in this job until we are. And I may not rest for 4 years, but I'm not going to be happy, till we get up there. And I don't want to take excuses. I've got solutions. I mentioned about looking at what curriculums they have, but I also want to look at our teachers. What percentage, or look at each teacher, especially math to start with, and see what percentage of their students are meeting math standards. I mean, that'll tell us right away where we got strengths and where we have concerns. If we're averaging 25, 26%, some are probably 50% or more. Not that that's great, but compared to 25, 26, it is. So what can we learn from that? And then likewise, if we're averaging 25 or 26%, some are probably, heaven forbid, 10% or less. And okay, what do they need? Do they need more training? Do they need more classroom help? Do they need to find another job? I don't know. I mean, if it's that low, it would identify where you need to, where you got strengths, where you got concerns, and you need to know where the problem is in order to fix it. You can't just, and the board came out, because the levy failed the first time, they kind of got a lot of money to make the second levy pass, which was interesting because if you looked at who gave them the money, it was their $5,000 from their janitorial service. It was $10,000 from like a construction engineering that, building their schools for them. And it's like $28,000 of the $32,000 they got was people in their back pocket. It's like, well, and it almost seems like it shouldn't be legal. Apparently it is, but.
Any unions involvement?
I don't know. I really don't know. But it just seemed more businesses.
So with the current situation, as far as you're running for the school board, how many positions, how often do they rotate? If you can kind of give some information on the stats.
You can also add, tell us a little bit about the position. We have about 10 minutes left, so share a little bit about the position, like what the importance of it, like kind of what the purpose of it.
The powers.
Yeah, you're directing, you really have power over the superintendent. You can hire and fire. In fact, this board twice now in the last 4 years has fired their superintendent and allowed them to walk away with over $500,000. The first one, John Steach, they fired him in 2019. He walked away with $301,000.
Why?
And well, it's like
severance package.
Yeah, it's like their golden parachute. If they fire him without cause, he in his contract gets a year's salary plus his accrued this, accrued that. And Mike Merlino, they fired him in December of 2021, so just not even 3 years later, and he walked away with his salary $269,000. So I have made a promise to voters that I will never fire a superintendent without cause. But I told my superintendent last night, I I'll read what he's in the Columbian this Saturday, Sunday, and it was a front page article. So this is good. It went out there letting people know how poor academically we're doing. This was across the board for the county, although Camas is doing a lot better. But, it was about that. And he's quoted as saying, and it was mainly about the pandemic, but he's quoted as saying, I think everybody sort of expected that when the pandemic ended, we'd get back to normal. But I think we're coming to the realization that there is no getting back to normal, end quote. So what he's saying is he's the leader of our district, making $344,000, and he's giving up, actually, of getting back and improving our academics. And our pre-pandemic academic achievement, or the normal he's talking about, was English 49%, math 39%, and science 40%. That was before the pandemic. We're lower than that, like 10 percentage points at least, basically on all of them. Actually, about 15. Crazy, but still, you're not going to get back to even that anemic. 39% math, 40. And he's giving up, and it's crazy. He's got no vision, no hope, and frankly, I told him, "What are we paying you for?"
It sounds like you'll be firing him if you get elected.
Well, I'm not going to fire him without cause, but I told him, "Give me a cause, and you're gone." That's what I said in my board meeting, the board meeting last night. And I do want to bring up one thing, and they're a 4-year term, so every 4 years. But I did want to bring up, since we're getting only 5 minutes left, maybe, the Columbian keeps bringing up a statement attributed to me, and it's a lie. It was fabricated by their writer, Griffin Riley, and I've done a public records request. It has to do with the library, and what I had said in December, they put me on the front page, and because they found out we were getting a majority on the board that would stand against Drag Queen Story Hour, and they didn't like it, and that article drew out a bunch of people from Portland or wherever to come to that board meeting and say terrible things about us. So whatever, that's their right, I guess. But what they wrote an article the next day, and I couldn't attend that meeting. It was my wife and I's 35th wedding anniversary, so we were at the coast. But I had a friend of mine read my comment, and I sent it in to the board. And what I said and what he said was fact. Drag Queen Story Hour performers have been found to be convicted sex offenders, and I've got names. I can give names. 2 guys in Houston alone. And anyway, what the Columbian wrote in the paper the next day, saying that he said in my place was, drag queens and transgender individuals come from a community of sexual abusers. And it's like, what? It's like, I never had transgender individuals in any part of my comment. I never said they come from a community of sexual abusers. I don't believe that. My friend doesn't believe that either. And he read it word for word. So what I've done since, and I did this, in August, I sent this writer that wrote that an email and letting them know I've got a public records request, because it's a matter of public record, my library board comment. I emailed it into the trustee board. So I got it back from the library. This shows exactly what I submitted. And, the Columbian still twice now. I was trying to send a warning shot, like, don't bring that up again, because I knew they would probably want to. And this was to try to keep them from doing that. And when I was at the interview October 10th, I told Greg Jane, the editor, I said, hey, I sent Griffin an email saying don't bring that comment up again, because I've got public record requests showing exactly what I said, and it is a lie. It was fabricated. And what happened? October 14th, they endorsed my opponent and brought that up again. So
even the Columbian wouldn't redact it?
No,
Usually
no.
That's...
Well, I did ask them in December, and they said, well, send us the library's transcript or their video, and we'll consider that. Well, they knew the library doesn't do a transcript. The library doesn't do a video. They do a minutes, but it's just briefly. It would have said Gary Wilson, spoke against Drag Queen Story Hour. That was all they would put out there. And so I guess because they're not doing that, they have liberty.
Yeah, I see most people will actually kind of see through all that and kind of get an idea that
Yeah, I just
not
wanted
gonna-
to add one thing. In January, my friend and I both went to the board meeting and shared what had happened. And they, at the end of that board meeting, decided, because they were there in December, they got my email because they're supposed to read them before the meeting. And they heard him speak, and they knew he spoke what I said, what I had written. And when we shared what happened, at the end of that board meeting, they voted to start recording, and I think it was unanimous. It was a unanimous vote, so they all agreed to start recording their meetings in February to keep the Colombian from, doing that in the future. You know,
Interesting.
accountability.
Well, that's good. Well, thank you for sharing all that. Thank you for coming in and sharing your stories. I know that we have a couple minutes left. There is a lot of the referendums out there. Maybe a couple of minutes if you can share what's out there. I know it's a whole program of its own, which we're planning to do. It's not. I don't think it's being decided right now. It's for next year. Is that correct? The signatures are getting gathered right now.
Yes.
So
Yes.
briefly share about that. I know that folks are right now might be interested to hear a little bit about it. But
Yeah,
if they're looking to get some signs.
Yeah, referendum 2081. That's the one I'm most familiar with. That's having to do with the schools and allowing parents to be able to view the curriculum whenever if they ask. And you might think, oh, that happens now. No, I brought this up to the board meeting as well. At the board meeting in 2019, I think it was when the battleground thing was going. I was learning more about comprehensive sex ed and some of the things in it and getting too explicit. And my daughter was just about getting at that age, and so I called the school district to view it. And I called them in October, and they're like, "Oh, you just missed the date. The next date is in March." And I'm like, "What?" And they're, "Yeah, you can just view it twice a year." And so I had to wait until March. But they don't want you opting your child out until you view it. But then they only give you 2 days out of the year to view it. And it's like, really? I mean, I would, and I've actually mentioned this at the Colombian interview. I said I would make that much more accessible to parents. The health and human growth development.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that. There's about a half a dozen of different ones from my understanding.
Oh, yes.
So for folks who want to sign those, they can probably just reach out to us and we'll let you know where they at. I know there's a couple of gentlemen who we know, Kamel, who is one
I know
that is
Kamel
very active.
very well.
So if you're interested to sign one of those, you can definitely do that and reach out. We'll help you with those as well. If you have just a couple minutes in closing for folks who are listening and they want to get involved, I know that Yaroslav mentioned PCOs and PCPs a couple times, once or before. And how do people get involved? How would you encourage them to, take that first step?
Yeah, you could contact, if we're going to talk about the Republican Party, I think if you look at what the Democratic Party supports and what the Republican Party supports, their platform, if you're pro-abortion, sure, go Democrat. If you're pro-life, go Republican. There really isn't a decision there. It's one supports one supports the other. So it's pretty clear in my mind, and as a Christian, a believer, it's pretty easy to, I really don't see how a Christian can actually be a Democrat. I'm sorry. To me, it's an oxymoron. They're not compatible. It's like oil and vinegar, or what I think that's oil and water. They don't mix. And so what I would say, we have a Republican office on 28th, and you guys are all over, but I would contact your local Republican office. PCO is a precinct committee officer. I am one. I got involved actually because of I was a Republican most of my life. But pretty much all of it. My family's all Democrat. I come from Massachusetts, pretty Democrat back there. but anyway, if you want to get involved, I kind of became a PCO because I saw the Republican Party had me in my library form at the Clark County Fair in 2019, and we got over 500 signatures. And I was like, these guys, they're standing behind me, and I'm going to get involved with them because they're, I'd been Republican, but I want to help them too. They're helping me. So yeah, you can find out if there's a PCO in your precinct. The district is, the Clark County's broken up into about 340 or so precincts, and it's about 1,000 homes in each. So it's manageable for one person. I mean, not all of them. I mean, you may have only 200 or 300 Republicans, probably 200 or 300 Democrats, and probably a couple of hundred people that just don't care either way, don't vote, or maybe some
Not affiliated.
libertarians or independents.
Right.
But
So precinct committee officer for Oregon is precinct committee person. So that's a position that is available for anybody to jump in and to get involved at a kind of a local level, and it's beginning kind of a stages,
Sure.
kind of the lowest elected position that you can get,
Yeah.
which can hold a lot of power as well, because that you can influence a lot of things.
and a lot of, maybe 80 or so of those 340 are not filled. So we
Right.
don't have someone there. So someone's got to try to do double duty. So if you live in one that isn't filled, or you could be living in one and maybe that PCO isn't really doing their job, some don't get out like they should. So,
Right.
but yeah.
A great way to jump in and get started. So I know that most of our team have gone through that sort of thing at one point. So definitely a great learning experience, and so I definitely recommend. Last comments, last words.
Just wanted to say my website, wilsonforevergreen.com. If you want to
So
learn
please,
more.
please share the website. Please share how people can get involved and help you out and all those good things.
Yeah, you can go out to the website, wilsonforevergreen.com. I've got a lot of videos out there, school board comments of mine, League of Women Voters forum that I did with my candidate, and then the Columbian interview. And you can watch the Columbian interview. It's a little long. It's almost an hour. But if you watch that, you'll walk away saying, he pretty much destroyed her. And the Columbian, of course, there was no way they were going to endorse me. They endorsed her, and then they brought up that comment that wasn't mine again, they'll do anything to bring me down. So we'll see. I've called 1,500 people. I've texted, 1,000, just handed out campaign cards, got door hangers, sent out a mailer to about 20,000 people.
Wow. Have you done the canvassing? Is that something
Yes.
you've been doing?
Yeah.
So-
I was ringing doorbells today, and I was at 2 schools dropping off more of these to parents when they were waiting to pick up their kids. So if I lose, it would only be because of the Columbian. So
Yeah.
that's really the only thing she's got going for her.
Right.
She's got a poor track record, scores, teachers strikes 2 of them in the last 6 years, and firing 2 superintendents, make them walk away with millions of half
Is this a runoff election, or is this the first cycle of this? Because I know there was some school board races back in like August, and then we have additional ones.
Oh, this is a primary. Oh, that was a primary.
Okay.
And because there was only 2 of us running, and this was kind of, I don't know how much time you get, but I felt God leading me to run for like a year. I kept going to all the school board meetings, trying to keep just kind of keep my streak going, just to be able to say, hey, I've been to these school board meetings, but there was another guy that signed up to run, and so there would be 3 of us, and I thought, with my baggage with the library, maybe this guy has a better chance of beating out the incumbent. So I called him, trying to see where he stood. He wasn't as conservative as me, but seemed okay. But I didn't get a real good feel that he was going to really put the effort in. So I started praying about it. God, do you want me to back out, and should this guy run? I hadn't really necessarily, I felt like he was leading me there. So what happened, I ended up praying about it with a special lady, and on a Friday, and I had to determine by that Monday if I was going to back out. And 15 minutes after we finished praying that God would give us a clear sign, I went out on the elections site and saw the other guy's name with a line through it. He had backed out. So it was like, okay, God, you want me in this race. It's pretty clear.
Well, look, good thing both of you didn't back out.
Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah. Good.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I'm glad. Well, sounds good. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, our program came to a close. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening to this program. Like always, we're coming on to inform and to educate. And, of course, as a nonprofit, we're here to educate the community. And as a nonpartisan organization, we don't endorse any particular party. But as a nonpartisan candidate, we definitely recommend folks to vote for you as a nonpartisan candidate. I think it would be a good vote for the community, and you would best represent the community. And the community knows you very well already, so I think it would be a great fit. So thank you and good luck.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you for everybody for tuning in. Yaroslav, thank you for coming by. Always good to have you on here. This is Dimitri, Yaroslav. Gary, good talking to you. And before we close, remind us the website again and where people can find you.
Sure, wilsonforevergreen.com.
Awesome. Thank you very much. You guys have a great day, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks.
Новости региона. Выборы, кандидаты, стремления. Новая программа Slavic Vote Life. Каждую неделю в прямом эфире. Slavic Vote Life дает голос славянской общине по всему северо-западу. Мы говорим и информируем о важном в Вашингтоне, Орегоне, Калифорнии. По четвергам в 17:00. Присоединяйтесь к прямому эфиру на 10:40 AM. Ищите Slavic Vote в соцсетях. Мы намерены продолжать продвигать свое видение и оказывать любую необходимую поддержку сообществу, чтобы изменить ситуацию к лучшему. Slavic Vote Life.
Внимание!
Редакция медиахолдинга Slavic Family не несет ответственность за содержание рекламных сообщений и авторских программ.
You are listening to KXPD